Good morning, and welcome to my podcast. Today, I want to talk about what is going on in the world in 2024. And there's a lot of people that are coming out with different predictions for 2024. And I just think that right now in the world, not just America, that we have too many different mini cults um, that are sort of being created around this woke mind virus situation that we have with the elites disseminating things that are then picked up by the public. And I think that we need new voices in the space of alternative media. Um, I feel a calling to start to talk about some of these things in a more spiritual context, in an objective viewpoint of the world, rather than having these little tiny subjective cults where people are disseminating information that doesn't have as much context as we need in this time. Um, and I am a follower of Christ. Um, I am a student of Rudolph Steiner, an anthroposophist, if you will. And so that's the way that I'm coming from. But I think it's important to have practical steps that we can take as humanity to better our health, to better our viewpoint of the world, to strengthen our souls, um, and to face reality with strength, and not to escape and avoid reality, but not to go too far into reality either. Um, this is the famous quote from Jesus: be in the world, but not of the world. And this is basically what we need to do in today's day and age. We need to face our collective world karma. Um, we need to face these things as humanity that we have brought forward. We have to take responsibility. We have to understand the grand context of where we are in our evolution as humans, in our evolution on Earth. Um, and we need to put these together through practical guidelines, practical thinking, um, practical thinking in a spiritual context, is what I really mean by that. And if we can do those things, we can be healthier as humanity. And I just think that right now, there are too many of these factions, and that's causing so much division in our time. And I could name some of them, but I think you know what I mean, when we're talking about even the Glenn Becks, the Alex Jones, the Tucker Carlsons, um, that sort of almost mainstream conspiracy, um, sort of the faces of this alternative right sort of alt media, um, the face of that. And they are essentially just continuously telling you the misery and the destruction of the world, and this sort of fear negativity context of things. It's a constant fear. It's a fear game, and they may have good intentions. I don't know that for sure, though. I don't know that because they, Alex has CIA connections with his father. He talks about how he still has connections in the CIA, and that's how he like can know things that are going to happen in advance. And I worry that they have sort of, they, in the context of the elites, have sort of allowed him to continue on and kind of this show trial of the Sandy Hook stuff um, that they've sort of blown up. And I think that it may just all be a sort of shell game where they are just kind of pretending to be against him while they let him continue to put out information. We look at like guys like Elon Musk who just allowed Alex Jones back onto the platform through a populist vote. He posted a question, should Alex Jones be reinstated? The majority voted yes, and that in fact did bring Alex back onto the platform. And so we are now in this world where we have a lot of people who are waking up to what is going on in the world. They're waking up, but they are being funneled. They are waking up and they are being funneled into this sort of Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk, Glenn Beck world, this sort of projection that they all make of this darker future. And I think that there's just not enough of a spiritual context, a context of also history. There's not enough context of just as humanity, how are we evolving? And what are these things? How are these things impacting our evolution? Um, and I don't want to just only name those guys, but what I do think is that a lot of awakening is happening since um, everything that happened with 2020, 2021, 22, um, with the jibby jabs and all the things like that, um, that kind of went on with the um, all of that stuff. I'm not going to name it all, but I think I'm just worried that um, it's not that everyone's getting funneled that way, right? It's there's another funneling that's happening, and it's sort of a spiritual funneling. People are looking for spiritual things and spiritual nature, um, and what we're seeing is this funneling towards this sort of new age, aliens, astrology type of thing. I'm not saying that any of that is false or any of that is good or bad. Um, but what I am saying is that there is sort of this funneling that is happening, and there's also sort of like the QAnon stuff that kind of is within that. Um, the bring Trump back, or Trump is controlling the government from behind the scenes, all this type of thing like that, that people are kind of talking about in this sort of alternative spiritual QAnon astrology sort of cults. Um, and there's very few people, in my opinion, that are just like more of a wider view, sort of an objective, wide lens on things. Um, and I guess I think that that's what we need in our time, and we need more of a practical, like a spiritual exercise, sort of world where we can work on. And I think this is the most important thing is we can spiritualize our thinking. Um, we can spiritualize our intellect into the eternal nature of Christ, of our destiny as humans on earth, um, to have an objective viewpoint of the world and of our world evolution. And my goal is not to dive as deep as Rudolph Steiner, because that information is out there for everyone if they want to go down that path. And I'm not suggesting that you need to. Um, I think that his work in today's context gets a lot of, I would say it probably instills a lot of fear into people to go that deep, because it's so deep within our humanity, that it's so deep in truth that people almost have a reflex to that, where they actually don't want to know the full truth of everything. Um, I know for me personally, I've struggled my whole life. And when I first came across anthroposophy through Douglas Gabriel, who also has a YouTube channel and has written books with Tyler Gabriel, as well as John Barnwell and Joe Visconti. But when I first came across all of that, it really spoke to me in a way that changed my life. Um, I was one of these people who was searching through astrology, through, Catholic faith, through all of these different factions and faiths, through, the sort of Egyptian, New Age type of like alien stuff, all of this stuff, the Nephilim, the, like, and it wasn't a comprehensive and full enough for me personally to feel okay about it. And so I was constantly searching, switching back and forth between like the Catholic Church and astrology and all this different stuff. And I still believe there's like goodness, a little bit of goodness within those things, and I think that astrology is useful. Um, but I think that basically what I needed was a larger sort of um, a larger context. And when I first read like Cosmic Memory, for example, by Rudolph Steiner, um, it just changed my life, because it gave me a perspective on our past and our future, right? It's where have you been and where are you going? Those are things that if we have an idea of that, we can start to work on some things for ourselves. And I guess where I wanted to go with it today was just to introduce that, um, and just to kind of say that basically my goal with this podcast is to help people, um, to direct their awakening towards something that is positive, something that is beautiful, something that is radiant with light, and is able to fill their souls with positivity and, um, views towards the future that can be dark, but they also can be light. Because, um, if we have a vision of that, we can then know what to work on ourselves individually, and we can kind of potentially know what to work on with everyone else, and try to help people. And I've been on the journey for about only a year and like 3 months with Steiner and his works. And so I'm still a newbie to this, but I have picked up on it pretty quickly. And I think that even lately, I've kind of come across like the major thing that's involved in it, and it's really eternal thinking. Because if we can have eternal thinking and eternal feeling and eternal willing in our actions, in our feelings, in our speech, in our thinking, then we can be within the destruction of the world today, and we can be there as a spirit, as an eternal spirit that is evolving and that isn't afraid of death, because we understand through spiritual science, through Rudolph Steiner, we understand what the afterlife is, um, and what those types of things are, that gives us a context. I mean, once you understand reincarnation and karma are real, um, that's important, right? And I think that what he's done is he's combined all of the religious streams and has it's not even him that did it. It's just he just spoke the truth of what it is. He was a stream. It's not like it's I don't look at what anthroposophy is as a cultish type of thing. A lot of people will mention that around anthroposophy because they say that people will just be like, you can only go through anthroposophy. There's no other way to do it. I don't think that's true. I think you can go a lot of different paths. I study all the religions, Christianity. I study the Bible. I study the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Tao Te Ching, Book of Changes, these types of spiritual books that are very important to our past and to our future. But Steiner puts a context on it because he talks about how we are evolving as human beings. And that's really important because if you don't understand that there was a different type of human being when those books were written, you won't understand that not everything within those books is able to be put into a context now, that can actually give us an idea of like the past and the future, right? I mean, in the past, people could see spiritual beings, in the realm, in their everyday perception in life. And so when these books were written, um, that's kind of the difference that Christ, um, sort of came down, and he kind of gave us a new path of perception. He gave us a new internal path of perception instead of an external path of perception. Um, he gave us an ability to reach the kingdom of heaven within ourselves, as he says. Um, he gave us that ego, that light that is within us that we can reach. And that's where I'm trying to say that we need to work on our eternal thinking, feeling, and willing as we're working through the spirit, um, into the, I apologize for that. And so if we can work into those areas through the spirit, um, and if we understand who we really are, which is the spirit, and to know your true self is to realize happiness, like, and that's your true self is the spirit within. And I'm not sure if I'm going too deep on this for the first podcast. I'm not sure how many people this will reach. I really don't know. Um, but I think that right now on Earth in 2024, we're dealing with so much um, corruption, so much poisoning. If you think about, there's even like the nutrition stream, right? Where there's like this decentralized medicine sort of approach that is coming along that is strong. It's a strong force. Um, that is like sort of towards this carnivore diet. It's sort of towards these things, which is something that I've tapped into as well. So I'm within like this sort of grass fed meats and raw milk and pasture raised eggs type of mentality, all organic vegetables, all organic foods if I can, no fried foods, no seed oils. Like I'm in that movement as well. Um, but I think that even within that movement, there's not a spiritualization of these things. There's not a context of spiritualization anymore. It's all material, right? I mean, if you think about someone like Jack Cruz or just people like that who um I'm not sure how much of a spiritual context they have, and that can be dangerous potentially. So we have to have, we can experiment as people who are searching for the truth of these things. But the most important truth is the spiritual truth, not necessarily the physical health truth of what we're trying to go towards. And this is a thing with like RFK as well, who I'm a supporter of. And I think that he's doing great. Everything is good, but he still refers back to the studies and the science, um, which I think is still within this materialistic realm. Um, and I think that there's another thing as well within that is we can go far into materialism, right? Far into the scientific literature and only trying to optimize the physical body, you know, using artificial intelligence to make us better employees, using artificial intelligence to optimize our health, getting an implant within your body that tells you exactly what to eat, exactly what to drink, and it's personalized for you so that you can live as long as possible. I believe that's where the future is headed. I believe that this is a mistake. Um, and I believe that there's another stream, which is sort of more like this new age astrology alien stream, that is more escapism, sort of like, you know, um, move out into the country, um, and escape reality, escape in a spiritual form, look for the truth in these circles. Um, but there's not as many people on this like middle path of those two, where you can combine the spiritual intellect that you're gaining, you can combine the material realm, and you can be within the material realm, and you don't need to be of it, and then you can combine them into this center piece, um, of what we talked about earlier of eternal thinking, feeling, and willing, so that you can go forth into the world and shine shine your light into the world, through Christ, through the Spirit, and you can still take these things that you're learning from these other sides of the physical health stuff, right, with experimentation, supplements, certain things like that, light therapy. For example, I have this like red light above me, um, which is interesting in the context of what Steiner talks about. I was just listening to something he said about that today, which I'm still wrapping my head around. So I don't want to comment on that, but there's all these things, right? Like getting morning sunlight, grounding, right? Like all of that there's a spiritual aspect to it. But a lot of people are not they're not doing that. They're looking at the studies, right? They're looking at the clinical trials. They're like alternative, but they're still looking at that stuff. Um, and so there needs to be a connection to our inner being, our inner spiritual being that is evolving. And how does that play into our evolution? How does the spiritual intellect, the escapism, sort of like, I just want to live on a farm, I want to get away from all this madness, you know, there needs to be a middle ground of those two. And that's a huge thing. Um, so I've gone through a lot today. I think I'm going to end it here. And hopefully you got something out of the video today. Um, and I think that I'm on a learning journey, just like you are. And so we're learning together through this podcast. And everyone have a great day. Have a great week. Go forth and shine your light to the world.